Hey guys, Mr. Kenny. I'm back with our part 2 on vertebrates and the transition to land. We ended up with fish in the previous video. Now let's talk about how they slowly transition to land. Now, when we talk about transition to land, we got to talk about the missing link, the evolution of tetrapods. And Tiktaalik is the missing link. It was discovered in 2004. It's represented up here at the top, and we've mentioned it before during evolution, but it's simply how the lobed fin fish, that those fins developed into legs through a very slow process. And Tiktaalik is the fossil that showed us the link between the two. Now, when we go back to the superclass Gnathostomata, we talk about amphibia. Amphibia appeared about 350 million years ago. They were the first tetrapods on land, but realize they still had a link to water. They had to go back to water to reproduce because they had external fertilization and they needed the water there. And they actually went through a process of metamorphosis into water because they originate as tadpoles, and as they grow in the water and become to their adult form, they metamorphosize into a frog. Now, they did have lungs that allowed them to exchange gases. They also had to keep a moist skin, which was also used in gas exchange. Now, the thing about amphibians that you definitely need to know, they had a 3-chambered heart. They had 1 atria and 2 ventricles. So it's not as effective or as efficient as our heart, which is a 4-chambered heart. They were ectotherms, which means their body temperature is regulated by the external environment, and they didn't have an internal regulation of that. So that kind of gives you an example of amphibians. Then you had reptiles. Reptiles are the next superclass. They're like your lizards, your snakes, your turtles, your crocodiles. They had a dry skin, usually a scales or sometimes an armor, and their lungs were the primary way they exchanged gases. They no longer had to exchange it through their skin, so their skin didn't have to stay moist all the time. They had a negative pressure system which allowed them to breathe. They still had that 3-chambered heart, and they were still ectotherms, so their body was still regulated by the environment. So that's why oftentimes you'll see snakes or lizards or whatever basking in the sun. They're regulating their body temperature. They reproduced through internal fertilization, and they laid what we call amniotic eggs. They laid eggs, and they had nutrients inside the egg which helped the embryo develop. The next class was aves. Now, aves had a unique body structure in which their bones were hollow, which allowed them to allow for flight, right? So they were able to fly. They had feathers and wings, so that's very unique as well. They had very efficient lungs and air sacs. They had a 4-chambered heart, which is 2 atria, 2 ventricle, that's like us, very efficient. They were endotherms, which means their body temperature was regulated on the inside, which is important as well. They had internal fertilization, and they still had that amniotic egg, so you can kind of see how they're linked to reptiles. Then you had, of course, the superclass, the class which is Mammalia, appeared about 65 million years ago. Characteristic of us, we have hair, well, most of us anyway, have specialized teeth. They had lungs, which was controlled by a diaphragm, which is negative pressure. The diaphragm moves down, less pressure inside makes our air go in. Have a 4-chambered heart, and we're endotherms. We reproduce internally, and we give birth to live young. We have mammary glands which make milk, which allow us to nourish our young. So this is the mammalian class. Now, when you talk about mammals, we have subgroups. We have 3 subgroups here. We have monotremes. Monotremes are egg-laying mammals. There are 2 still in existence today. There's the duck-billed platypus and the echidna, which is the echidna, that's the way you say it, which is the spiny anteater. Both of these are found in Australia. So they're a little bit different than what we would classify as normal mammals. There's also marsupials. Marsupials are pouched mammals. Their young develops inside their pouch attached to a nipple. They spend a very short time in placenta, and then they spend the rest of their development inside the pouch. Koala, kangaroo, and in North Carolina would be the possum are examples of marsupials. Then you had a placental mammal. Placental mammal has a placenta, a true placenta, that nourishes the embryo, and that would be like your shrews, your bats, your whales, and of course humans. Now, the next thing, you go from mammals, you go to an order of the primates, evolutionary speaking. And primates are us. We have hands and feet for grasping. We have an opposable thumb. You have parental care, a complex social behavior. You have different suborders. You have like the prosimians, which are like your lemurs, and your tarsiers. They have these great big eyes. You can see them over here on the chart, such as right here. You probably have seen these before. Then you have your Then you have your Anthropoida, which are your monkeys, your apes, your humans, which have the opposable thumb. 45 to 50 million years ago is the first known fossils we have. You have your hominoids, which are your great apes and your humans, and your hominids is an era classification. You go from Australopithecines, which are extinct. That's actually what the skeleton Lucy was. If you remember her, she's Australopithecines africanus. Then you have the genus Homos, which are us, Homo sapiens, and we're the only ones that are still around. There were also Homo erectus and some other Homo species. When we talk about human evolution, we need to talk about misconceptions. Number one, there's a misconception that humans have chimp ancestors. That's not necessarily true. What really happened is, or what we think happened is, that chimps are a branch and humans are a branch. So even though they do have a common ancestor, chimps are not the common ancestor. Also, to think of human evolution as a continuous step or parade, if you will, is kind of a misunderstanding of how it works, because if it is, it's very disorganized. Actually, there were several groups of humans that coexisted at the same time, and just one outcompeted the other. And then you can think of it like this: traits didn't go one after another in a unison order. That was actually a mosaic of evolution. Some ancestors had small brains, but they developed the upright walking, etc. Some had larger brains, and they developed other characteristics. And over time, through interbreeding, these came about. Now, when we talk about the first humans, apes and humans split is thought to be about 5 to 7 million years ago. Australopithecus africanus, Lucy, was discovered about 4 million years. Was thought to be about 4 million years ago, and she is just one of those in the lineage. She's the oldest human-like organism, the one to believe to walk upright. You have Homo habilis, which is handy human. He was the first one to use tools. We know this because we found tools around the skeletons, stone tools. Homo erectus was the first to be upright and migrate. And then you had Neanderthals about 200,000 years ago, and then Homo sapiens believed to about 1 million years ago. Anyway, that's just a brief overview into vertebrates, and I will talk to you soon.